Hey, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Justice Revolution. I am your host, James the Patriot. Have with me my ever so faithful co-hosts. I've got Justice, my producer co-host, and Crash, again, filling in for Erica. As you guys know, Erica has been up to her neck in moving into their new property. We hope to have her back on next week. But say hello, guys. Crash, Justice, how you guys doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing well. The sun is out. I can't complain. So, you still getting rained on out there in beautiful Mississippi?
We have a little bit of a break today. It rained all day yesterday, though, so it's mud.
That's good.
Like everything's mud, but
yeah. Well, what do you expect when you're in the Mississippi River Basin, right? So,
fertile land and lots of mud.
Lots of mud. Amen. Amen. Justice, you still buried under snow, or is that all gone now?
I'm actually in the mud as well.
Are you?
Yep, mud season. River flowing through my backyard.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've here in Utah, as most of you know, and we've said this before, we had a record amount of snow this year, and now we're dealing with the runoff and flooding and other things of that nature. So it's going to be an interesting spring moving into summer. So
yeah, we were just saying we all keep waiting for that, global warming, and it just.
I know. Just keep waiting. Just keep waiting. So, hey, I have a guest with us today. One of my good friends. You guys probably everybody who follows us should know this guy, and if you don't, I'm going to introduce him. So I've got Alphonse with me, Alphonse Faggiolo from beautiful Eastern Pennsylvania, just south of Philadelphia, right?
We're actually, we're doing pretty good weather-wise right now. We're sort of in summer, so that's all right. I'll deal with that for now.
Yeah.
No flooding.
Yeah,
we have no flooding or anything like that.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I was actually just earlier this week. I was in upstate New York, so I wasn't too far from where you were, where you are, Alphonse. But it was nice up there. It was in mid 60s, low 70 degrees. It was beautiful. So. But anyway, thanks everybody. This is I don't remember what episode this is, but today is May the 12th in the year of our Lord 2023. We are going to talk about property taxes. This is the episode I've been waiting to have for a while, and I've wanted to have Alphonse on for a little bit, so I appreciate you joining us today to talk about this. If you follow Alphonse and his channel on Telegram, you should know that there isn't anybody, maybe with the exception of Steve Emerson, that knows more about property taxes than Alphonse. He's been up to his neck with it, dealing with this garbage for where he lives and the homes that he has. So I thought, who better than to have on to talk about this than Alphonse? So with that, we're going to jump right into it. The question of the show that I think we should start off with is, are property taxes legal? In that sense, I mean, why are they here? Why do we have them? Why are they being applied to us as we the people of this land? And what's their purpose? So maybe we could start there, Alphonse. What are your thoughts on where did property taxes come from? How is it that they're being applied to us? And let's just kind of maybe go give a little bit of a history as far as that goes.
Yeah, property taxes are perfectly legal when they're applied to the people, to the entities that they were written for, okay? The government, they created three types of taxes, duties, imposts, and excise taxes. They're the three types of taxes the government has. That's what they can tax from. Now, that was made to be applied to corporate entities. And it's funny, when you go look at your income tax law, it's all tied to your property tax law. People think they're two separate entities. You have property tax and income tax. They actually they're one and the same, because Pennsylvania is more clear to most states.
Yes,
Pennsylvania comes right out in states in Title 61. If anyone wants to look this up for your state, you've got the same matching, very similar statute. It's section 153.1 and 155.1. Here's what a taxpayer is. It actually says taxpayers. It's an entity organized and incorporated under the statutes. And in other words, you got to be that first part before we get to these other parts. And doing business in the state, or owning property in the state, or conducting activities in the state. That's what a taxpayer is. And within that code there, they will also break down. I think it's like 11 or 12 separate legal entities they'll break up. S corporations, partnerships. They'll break up the individual taxpayer entities. That's what taxpayers are. Now, government needs taxes to run. Governments are businesses. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That's what they do. They're in the business of government, of providing services. But it's very fundamental, and what they've done to people. And I don't know whether Steve says he thinks it's more out of ignorance than being nefarious. I wonder sometimes when you deal with these people, but it's no more complicated than this. I'm playing a devil's advocate for me. Does the state legislature own your property?
No.
Okay. Can the state legislature grant themselves rights in your property?
No.
Okay. So there must be a way that they can touch the property. Got to be a legal written way they can touch the property, correct?
Yeah, they got to have some jurisdiction over the property, some way of being able to gain jurisdiction over the property, I should say.
Right. And so,
well, did we lose him?
He froze.
Oh no.
You're freezing, Alphonse. If you can hear us.
You still there, Alphonse? Let me
I'm going to get these dropouts from time to time. That's going to happen.
Okay.
So government just can't come in and say, listen, we're going to tax your property because we need money. That's not how it works, okay? So there must be some kind of nexus between the state legislature and your property. Well, where does that come from? That comes from a word called a situs, S-I-T-U-S. And all a situs means is the right to tax something. That's all a situs is. It's a right to tax something. So when you organize, we talked about Title 61, 153.1, 155.1. When you organize and incorporate under the statutes, you become a creature of the state and a creature of statute, okay?
Yes.
That's the municipality where you live is a creature of the state. That the county that municipality is located in is a creature of the state. And you'll see them referred to as creatures of the state in actual court cases, documents. They refer to them as creatures of the state. So when you organize and incorporate under a statute, you become a creature of the state and a creature of statute. Okay? That then creates the nexus to your property, because then they can charge you. When you organize and incorporate a business under the statutes, they can charge you on the privilege of doing business in the state. That's the excise tax. Okay.
Yes.
We're talked about. They can charge duties, imposts, and excises.
Yep.
Well, they're not going to charge Justice or Crash or you duties, imposts, and excises. I mean, duties and imposts, because you're not importers and exporters. That's what duties and imposts are for importing and exporting. But they can only charge an excise tax. So they're going to charge you an excise tax for the privilege of doing business in that state. And given that you're using that property, because remember, when you set that business up under the state, guess what you've got to register?
Yeah.
A domicile.
You got a registered location. Yeah.
A location. They call it, that's your domicile. Okay. In domicile, there's business domiciles, and I could say I have a domicile, but a domicile is the base of operations of the business. That's where we're going to send all the tax paperwork. That's where they're going to contact anybody, and that's where we're going to lien or levy anything if they want to get tax money from. You got to have, in other words, you can't use a post office box. You got to have an address. All right. So that's how they get the nexus, the situs to the property. And since you're using your property to conduct that business privilege, now they can charge you a property tax, because they just can't charge you a property tax for for just existing, for the property existing and you existing. They just can't charge a property tax. And there's a great case out there called Redfield versus Fisher. It's posted up on my site. It's posted in my pin group. Go read that. It's a beautiful case, and it's one that Steve talks about all the time. And it's funny, I had trouble finding that case. Like, it kept popping up on Patriot websites. And I'm like, I don't trust anything on those sites. So I had Brandon look it up for me on Westlaw. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to trust that. So I had Brandon look it up on Westlaw, and he found it. He actually found the case, and he posted it. And it's a lethal case when you read it. It basically says just what we were talking about, that you just can't tax the individual or us, us or your property simply for the reason because they exist. That doesn't mean they're taxable.
Yes.
So that's what the tax thing's about. So now if you bring it down to the local level, so now we know that the state legislature must have a nexus, a situs with the property. And the only way that situs can be gained is through registering the property, okay? Becoming a legal entity. Hence why, James, when someone dies in your family, like your mom or dad, and they're the last one left, they want you to raise an estate. They want you to go create an estate, because guess what an estate is, James?
Created under the entities. Yeah.
It's a legal entity. And what can they do with legal entities?
They can tax them.
Subject to what?
It's subject to property taxes.
An estate is considered a creature of statute. Okay? Estates only exist under statute. They were created under statute. So when you raise an estate for your dead mom or your dead dad, well, now they're going to tax the hell out of you. They're going to get their little tax money. This is why these lawyers are dying for you to raise an estate. And we'll talk about that later, how to get around that. Yeah. But so they must have a nexus with the property, the state legislature. Now let's talk about your local municipalities, your county and your local town. Do you realize they have no powers to do anything? Your local county and your local municipality have zero inherent powers to do anything. They must be expressly granted powers from where? The state legislature.
Yep.
Must expressly grant them rights to do things. So your local county has no authority to tax. Your local town you're in has no authority to tax, okay? They must be expressly granted that right from the legislature to tax. But we just talked about that. If the legislature doesn't have the right to tax your property directly, can they do it indirectly through the county or through the town? No. And there's a court case in there. I got the citing. I'll read it to you. It's pretty great. I mean, it came out of Pennsylvania, but basically it says that it seems odd that the legislature would be able to create they call it a creature of the state that can do indirectly, which the legislature can't do directly.
Exactly.
If the legislature can't tax you directly, how would it be able to tax you through the county or through the town? They can't. And you know how this works is there's no one from the state making these claims against you, okay?
No.
Nobody from the state stepping up and saying you owe property taxes.
Yeah, it's all at the county level.
It's all your local government, okay? Your local town, your local borough, whatever. That's where it's happening, okay? And what they've done is they've dumbed the people down, like they've dumbed all of us down, to believe that you're a taxpayer. And it's really makes the hair on your arm stand up when you read these tax cases. I read a ton of them in Pennsylvania. When you hear the courts talking about matters in like appeals and all, you should hear them talk. It's always the taxpayer said this, the taxpayer did this, the taxpayer did that.
Yeah.
So it's no longer James they're talking about. They're talking about the taxpayer, the legal entity taxpayer. Okay. Taxpayer. And most people go right along with it and will identify themselves as what? A taxpayer.
Taxpayer.
You're not a taxpayer, okay? You have a right to earn a living. Okay, you have a right to make money, okay? It's a different ballgame if you are running a huge business in the county and you're using the county's resources to make money. You know, they're providing whatever, roads, protection, whatever they're providing for you. That's different. Then they're going to claim they have a situs or a nexus to tax that property. But if you're Joe Blow who's working a job to feed his family, you have a right to work. That your labor is your property, okay? You don't owe the government anything for that, all right?
Just so everyone's aware, there are plenty of cases to support that. This is not just Alphonse saying this. This is not just Alphonse saying this. I've been saying this for however long we've been doing this show. Is you have a right to earn a living. You have a right to make money.
Well, it's a systemic problem, not just a county or, a corruption problem, because they have it to where your mortgage is automatically going to pay taxes. So we're actually, we're disabled veterans, both me and my husband. So we're tax exempt from property taxes in Mississippi anyway. But for the first year, they taxed us through our mortgage, even though we're disabled veterans.
Yeah.
Because they weren't communicating.
That's an interesting point that Crash brings up there, and I don't want to cut you off, Alphonse, but you know, when
No, wait,
people
on that
go-
point, real quick, let me recommend. She's right. Listen, here's what I recommend. When you get a mortgage, separate your taxes out of your mortgage. You can do that.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Keep them out of your business. Keep the lender out of your tax business.
Can you do that? Can you do that post mortgage, post closing?
Yeah, they usually make you pay like a quarter point or something. They charge you like a little fee.
Yeah, you all it is it's the technical term is called an escrow account. There's only two items that are in an escrow account: your homeowner's insurance generally, and taxes. So I remember when I just refinanced my property recently, and I told them, it's like, no, I don't want an escrow account. I'll do this on my own. It's like, no, well, we won't let you get this loan then. I was like, well, I was in a bind and I needed to get it done. I was like, fine, whatever, I'll deal with this later. So you might find that. But here's the interesting thing. Of all the documents that I signed at my mortgage closing, guess which document I did not sign? There was nothing there that granted the county any authority to tax me whatsoever.
No.
There was nothing where I was admitting that I was a taxpayer. Nothing. So this is, you know, this is the interesting
the assessor
thing.
Going in after you register the property. After you register the property, the assessor goes in to the property record and changes it as a taxable deed. That's called record tampering. Okay, that's what that is. It's federal record tampering.
Yes,
and that's stuff you're going to see in the lawsuit. You'll see my suit, and my suit. People are wondering where it's at. Listen, Steve's got it. He's had it for about a week. Steve's been busy. He's looking it over. I want the man to look it over before I file it. Okay, I want to get the stamp of approval from him before I put the paperwork out there. And once he gives me the stamp of approval, I'm going to file it.
I like what Christian said here, a citizen. Yeah, good point there, Christian.
Well, listen, your citizenship does not bind you to taxes. That's another misconception. People think if you're a citizen, you're identifying yourself as a taxpayer, and it's actually the total opposite.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Alphonse?
Real quick. I'm going to pull up my property tax suit real quick, and I'm going to read you one little citation from a Supreme Court judge in Pennsylvania. Now, what is the term that everyone's afraid of? Sovereign citizen?
Oh, yes.
Aren't they all afraid of sovereign citizen? Oh, don't call me a sovereign citizen. Okay. Let's see what the courts say. Let's see what this judge in Pennsylvania said. You ready? Here we go. Article 1 of the Pennsylvania Constitution is titled Declaration of Rights. The entire article is concerned with establishing the principle that the people are sovereign, not the state. There are 26 sections in Article 1, and every single section with concerned with the rights of the people, not the state. To isolate one sentence out of 26 sections in the Declaration of Rights and say that it should be interpreted to protect the rights of the state, not the people, is ludicrous, and it violates all reasonable principles of constructing written language in proper context. Article 1, the Declaration of Rights, opens by stating that the purpose of the Declaration is that the general, great, and essential principles of liberty and free government may be recognized and unalterably established. Nothing is said about protecting the state. The complete declaration, its language, tone, and thrust concerns the protection of the people, not the state. He's telling you right there, the people are sovereign, not the state. And you'll see it in my actual pleading. I stick that in their face in about 3 or 4 different places. I call myself one of the sovereign people of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Challenge them to come step down and challenge it. Guess what they're going to do, James? They're going to shut their mouth and move on.
Yeah.
Because they can't challenge it. It's not me saying it. It's the court that said it.
Okay? Well, these principles have been around. You know, I have a great case I like to cite, and maybe you've heard this case before too. Have you heard the case of Hale versus Henkel?
Oh yeah. Government owes you owe the government nothing. Basically,
because the government. I mean, this was a United States Supreme Court, and we've talked about this, but it says the individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He's entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no such duty. In this case, they were asking him to open up his books to try and incriminate himself to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom. Beyond the protection of his life and property, his rights are such as existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of the state and can only be taken from him by due process of law and in accordance with the Constitution. I mean, guys, these things that we're talking about here, the things that Alphonse is saying, the things that I've been saying, there's nothing wrong with calling yourself one of the sovereign people of whatever state you're in. In my case, the sovereign people of Utah. In Crash's case, the sovereign people of Mississippi. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what has happened is you have bad actors who have taken good people who have the best of intentions and are sick and tired of living under the tyranny that we've been dealing with. And they've convinced them, hey, no, you need to call yourself a sovereign citizen. And here's why that's better for you. You need to go out there and do this. You need to go out there and do these things. And it does you no good. It does. And I'm not going to go down this road because we've been here, Justice. How many times have we talked about this now?
Way too many.
Way too many.
It's not a fight for the street. It's a fight on paper.
Exactly. So the reason why I do this show, the reason why I do what I do, the reason why Alphonse does what he does, I mean, I was inspired to do what I'm doing because of Alphonse. I've told him that. I heard him on a show, on a radio. It was actually on the SGT report. And I was like, hey, if this guy can do this, I can do this too. It's not like it's rocket science here. And I don't mean that to belittle Alphonse by any means. But he's like, who the crap are you? And I was like, yeah, this guy's right. Who the crap are you to tell me what I can do with my property or what I can do with my body or any of these things? It's no different here with the property taxes. And the problem is that it's – sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, when you start reading your local tax code, you read the definition. James, I can't make this stuff up. In my local, it's called the Local Tax Enabling Act. That's what your town's using to tax you, not your county, your town to get their little trash taxes and this and that, you know. Taxpayer defined, ready? Person or business required to file an income tax return. Required to file an income tax return. Now, most people, they're required to file income tax returns. I don't want to get into the whole IRS thing. But if you don't file a return, okay, nobody from the county is going to come in and no one from your local government is going to come in and say, hey, James, you're required to file a return. That's not going to happen. The only problem you may run into is that thug organization called the IRS. Yeah. Okay. That's the only pushback you have. Nobody from the county's coming in after you, and nobody from your borough's coming in after you. But if you read that local tax code, James, guess what's in that local tax code? An auditor and an audit process where for a real taxpayer is required to file a tax return. The county and the local borough, guess what? They could audit that business. Like you were just talking about opening your books with that guy. They could come ask you to open your books. But you and I don't have books. Why? We don't have a business. Okay.
Right.
We don't run books. You know, I don't have, inflows and outflows and expenses and depreciation. I'm not a business. So when you start reading the local tax code and you understand the basic principles, you're going to start seeing stuff jump out at you. Like, look at this. There's an audit process. I've never been audited in the 45 years my parents had that house in Ridley Park. My dad and mom never been audited. I never been audited. Well, if I'm a taxpayer and I'm not paying your taxes, you should have audited me. Why couldn't they audit me? Because they can't audit me. They have no legal authority to audit me. Why? Because I'm not a taxpayer. There's no way they can come in and make a case that I'm a taxpayer. And they know this. There's no suit. Listen, in Pennsylvania, just like in your states, here's how suits for taxes work. The attorney general of the state's got to bring the suit. But that's not what they're doing in your local county and your local town. They're railroading you through these administrative processes where attorneys are creating liens out of thin air, filing them with a clerk with no judge looking over anything. The clerk enters a judgment against you. Nobody's seen anything. There's been no trial. The clerk enters a judgment against you. And then when you don't pay it, they forge, in Pennsylvania, it's different in your state, they forge what's called a writ of Seer Fossey, which is sort of like a forced way to make you pay. Another document that, guess what? It's a judicial instrument that must be signed by a judge. Guess what's not signed, James? That writ's not signed, okay? And there's no seal. So they're misusing the actual tax code. They most of them don't understand the tax code. Believe it or not, most of them are dummies.
This is the problem that you have, and Alphonse he's not wrong here, because what happens is these local counties. So I'm going to speak for Utah for a minute, because I have just spent hours upon hours in the Utah tax code, under the property taxes, under the assessor, and what their job is. And under the tax code, it's very clear. Every county is required to have an assessor. That assessor is required to keep on his books property that is subject to property taxes, right? So that's key right there. And then it talks about, there was some key phrases that Alphonse dropped there. You guys notice that? One of them was taxpayer. Every single one of you needs to look in your state your state laws. Look under the taxing code or whatever it is, and look up the definition for taxpayer. It's going to say something along the lines of this. A taxpayer is defined as a natural person, comma, a corporation, comma, an association, comma, a joint stock corporation, comma, or all these other different things. Okay? So what does the everyday man and woman do when they read that? They see the first thing, the natural person. Oh, well, I guess that's me. So I must be a taxpayer. Do you guys remember, Justice? We talked about this in our last episode when we had Dr. Moore on. Do you remember the term e justum generis?
Yeah.
Do you remember what that term means?
No.
Crash, do you remember what that term means? E justum generis?
I remember you looked it up.
We did.
Found like 2 different definitions, but no,
okay.
I don't remember.
Alphonse, educate us. E justum generis is...
Yeah, what's the other Latin phrase? I always kid around with Brandon. I say the phrase that shall not be said, because I butcher it. It's
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right? The other
one? I do. The easier one is e justum generis.
Yeah, these are 2 Latin phrases, and they sound real complicated. They're pretty basic. Here's what they mean.
Oh, here it is.
Generis means.
Nascitur associs.
That's the one.
Nascitur associs. Thanks, Bible Book Club. Thank you.
That's the one. So here's how you remember it. A justum generis means of like kind. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if we're making a set, and I got a dog, a pig, a cat, and an apple, okay? The apple doesn't belong. Why? Because it's not of like kind.
Right.
Okay? It would have to be of like kind, okay?
Yes.
The other one that he just put up there, the other Latin phrase, here's the other way to remember that. And this comes right from a court citing. This is why I like it, okay? Words are known by the company they keep.
Yes.
That actually was said by the court. Words are known by the company they keep, right? So think about it. You just read that list of entities there, James, right? So we got 8 things in the list, okay? So the first thing, natural person, things are known by the company they keep. If the 7 other things are legal entities, doesn't it dictate by the rules of statutory construction that a natural person is a legal entity? And when you read what a natural person is, actually in Black's law, it talks about that's someone that is ascribed rights and duties. Yes. Are you ascribed rights? Does anybody ascribe you rights?
No.
My rights come from God. They didn't come from another man.
You have natural rights. You have we call them substantive rights to live. Okay, you have a right to live, to feed yourself. Nobody ascribes you the right to feed yourself and to live. Okay.
Yeah.
And it'll stay right there in the definition of natural person. Lawyers refer to this as natural persons. These are entities that are ascribed rights. So who would that be? That'd be a sheriff. That'd be a judge. That'd be a tax collector, a treasurer. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're natural persons. In other words, they're living, breathing entities. They're not a stack of papers. Okay. They're natural persons. Remember, we got 2 types of persons. One type of person is a stack of papers. It's called a county. It's called a municipality. It's called a company. It's nothing but a stack of papers. That is a legal person. Mm-hmm. It's a legal person. Then we have natural persons. What are natural persons? They're living, breathing entities that operate in some kind of function, okay? They're operating according to rights that they are ascribed, rights and duties that they were ascribed. Yes. So when you get the job of treasurer for the county, you have certain rights and duties ascribed to you, James, right?
Yep.
You have a right to collect taxes for the county, but you're just being mistrained, and you're thinking that every inch of property in the county is taxable.
Yeah.
And it's not, but that's what they're trained to do. Okay.
Yeah.
And think about the business model. It's a beautiful business model.
Oh,
hey,
geez.
Let's steal $300 million a year from people. We'll do it for years before some guy like Steve Emerson pops up and bangs us for about $40 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
So if I steal, let's see, $800 million and I pay out $10 million, that's a pretty good return, ain't it?
Yes, it is.
800, pay 10 back. What incentive do they have to change that?
They don't.
Okay.
They don't.
That's why we're in the mess that we're in right now.
Yes.
And that's why, unless you're Steve Emerson and you sit down with the assessor and you say, hey, listen, I need to have a conversation with you. I'm going to need you to take my property off the tax roll. And he does that, which he just did for him again. Okay. Because he knows Steve will sue him and they will lose. Okay.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me are you telling me that tax assessor was dumb enough to put Steve's property back on his tax rolls?
Well, he bought a piece of property that he just built another home on. Okay. Then he just bought another piece of property. But the property built where he built the home, I said, I know you got it off the tax roll. I said, tell me about that. He said, well, I just had a little conversation with the assessor. And he thought it was better he would remove it from the tax roll. Okay? because he was just going to sue the hell out of him, And
well, that's a good segue because Bible Book Club asks this question: what if our state tax codes for real property assessment don't mention returns? And I'm not sure the second part is correct, such as Pennsylvania and Florida statutes. I'm quite positive Pennsylvania requires a return. Bible Book Club, I can give you a quick answer. See, Utah doesn't specify anything about a return. However, when you read the code, you're going to see taxpayer, 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 taxpayer. So I'm like, okay, this is a legal entity organized under the statutes and codes of the state. That is not me. And just because I buy a piece of property that has been here long before the state was ever organized does not give them a right to tax it. Matter of fact, if you read your state's constitution and you look at the enumerated powers that you grant your elected officials, there might be something there that says property tax, but it has nothing to do with land, has nothing to do with the ground and the soil that was here long before the state was ever organized. Nothing to do with the source.
That person that posted that, they're right, because here's where the confusion comes, okay? They'll tell you at the county level that we don't use returns for property taxes.
Yep.
Okay? They actually think that they're two separate things. They think they could just tax any piece of property in their area, okay?
Because it's in their county.
Mm-hmm. That's why it doesn't work. We just talked about, can the legislature just willy-nilly, do they own your property? No. Can they grant them rights? Can they grant themselves rights in your property? No. Remember, we talked about there has to be a nexus. So when you're reading just about property taxes, you may have trouble finding things called returns, things that, they're talking about returns. Remember, we talked about Title 61, 153.1, 155.1. There's two elements to it, okay? One is, here's what a taxpayer is. Like you just mentioned, it's an entity organized and incorporated under the state statutes. That's the first hurdle you have to clear. Unless you clear that hurdle, we can't even talk about the property yet, okay? You got to clear that first hurdle. So once you clear that hurdle, then the statute says, both of them say, and there's a list of things. So if you're organized, incorporated, and owning property, and doing business, and creating business activities in the taxing district, you've got to clear that first hurdle, okay? That's where the return comes from. And to cement it in that person's head how it works, think about it. If you don't have a return, what are you taxing? You got to have a return, okay? Because when you read what a return is in Pennsylvania, they talk about the return. There's three elements to a return, okay? Now, they'll just look at element number one. They'll look at the market value of the property. And they'll go on Zillow. He's who called me. They'll go on Zillow and they'll go on whatever, and they'll say, hey, James, your property's worth $400,000, But when you read what the actual assessment law is, there's three elements in it. And guess what it says? They must all be considered, must all be considered together. So one's the actual market value of the property. Here's the second one, James. Depreciation and obsolescence and replacement costs. Do you send depreciation or replacement costs to your county or to your town each year, telling them, hey, here's the depreciation cost of my home. I'm depreciating my TV, my oven. But you don't have depreciation and replacement costs. Okay. Now the third element is income approach. You have any income at your property there, James? Using your property to create income? So now you're now deficient. No. Okay, you're deficient 2 of the 3 elements now, okay? They can come up with a market value, but they can't come up with an accurate market value. Why? Because they never actually come into the property to assess it. You could be living in a burnout shell for all they know. So what they say, they think they're slick. And they say, well, we do mass appraisals. It's a mass appraisal on the market value. There's a problem with that. Even in a mass appraisal, here's what a mass appraisal will be for. If I'm a builder, I buy a huge swath of land in the county to build a housing development, okay? And I'm building 40 of the same houses. Well, they're going to go in and look at the one house and tax it and then use the same tax for the other 39. They're not going to go into each separate unit and tax it, okay? That's what a mass appraisal is for. But with a mass appraisal, even when you read about mass appraisals, they're based on knowing what the depreciation and replacement costs are already and knowing what the income is from the builder, okay? So even when they say they're using the mass appraisal process, they're still doing it wrong because you must have all 3 elements in an appraisal. Now, what's the only way you can get an accurate appraisal? Well, every business in your county, Justice and Crash and James, every county in your business, they supply the county or the local borough or township a tax return each year. And usually it's a copy of their federal tax return they'll use. So whatever federal tax return they file with the IRS as a business, they supply a copy to the county or to the local municipality. Now, here's the funny part. When you read about this, you're never going to believe what the definition in my local tax code is of an assessment. Now, can you put this together? Think about this now. Here's what an assessment's defined as. It's an underpayment. Now, wait. Now, how can we get to that? Now, think about it. If I'm a business and I'm required to file a return each year with the county and the local borough, whatever, and I file a return, remember, this is self-reporting. When you file returns, it's self-reporting. You determine what you're going to report. So now I determine I owe $8,000. And I put $8,000 in there, and I submit it to the county, okay, or to the township. They get the tax return. They look at it, and they go, I'm looking at his income here. I'm looking at this. This guy Faggiolo, no, he owes us $10,000. Okay? That's their assessment, that I owe them $10,000, not $8,000. Now look at that definition of assessment. It's an underpayment. So they would then send me out an assessment for what? $2,000 more. Because that's an underpayment that I made. That's what an assessment is. It's an underpayment, okay? So all that can only happen through filing returns. They got to know what the income of the business is. They got to know what the depreciation of the equipment is and what the replacement costs are for the equipment. And they got to know what the market value of the property actually is. They're the 3 elements they need. There's no way they can come that you can get those without an assessment. Without an assessment, you're just throwing a number on a piece of property. Yeah. Now, you have a right to own property in your state and you're in the federal. Yeah, I mean, it tells you have a right to own, to acquire, possess, and protect property. You have a right.
Yeah.
Can they tax a right? Can a right be taxed? Okay. No. So then, can they put a value on the right?
No. How do you do that?
Value for right?
How do you do that?
You got a right to free speech. You got a right to free speech, James. We're going to put a value on that, okay? We're going to put a tax value on that right of free speech.
Oh,
isn't that what they're doing with your home?
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on.
You own it. It's yours, but you owe us $400,000, and we made this centie thing up and the millage, and you times this by this, and you owe us this money.
Yeah, and then they
they can't do that.
Well, and it gets worse, Alphonse. I mean, and I'm sure you're getting there, but let me just fill people in. So let's just play for a moment that, you're not like all these other millions of Americans that have an escrow account where your mortgage company is just paying your taxes for you because they're part of the scheme. They're part of the scam. Let's just say that you're paying your property taxes, or you're getting a bill in the mail for property taxes. And I don't know what it's like in other states, but here in Utah, under the tax laws, if a business fails to pay its property tax for 4 years, then the state has a right. That's again, what's a natural person? It's someone who has rights ascribed to them. So the state is a natural person, has a right to hold a tax sale. So I ask you this question. How is that above board, and how is that constitutional, and how does it not constitute a bill of attainder when the state sends you bills, and if you are in, if you're having a hard time and you can't make your property tax payments, and 3 or 4 years go by, and then they just go and sell your property on the steps of the courthouse, and then you get a sheriff's notice to vacate your property? How is that above board?
Right. And when you read the real tax laws and how that works, that tax sale, here's how that would work, James. If you owe $20,000 as a business, they could come in and seize $20,000 worth of equipment and sell it to get the back taxes. So justice owes taxes, okay? So what am I going to do? Let me go seize 4x4 square foot piece of her front lawn and sell it, okay, to get the $20,000, right?
Exactly.
No, there's no process for that, James. There's no process in law to sell pieces of people's property or to sell their property. There's no process for the government to sell the people's properties. It doesn't exist. That shocks people. There is no written process for the county to sheriff sale your house.
See, and so what Alphonse is saying here, what have we been harping on for so long, you guys? What do these state actors do? They do things under the color of what?
Law.
Under the color of law. So what does that mean? It means they have policies and procedures within each county or within each municipality or town or borough or whatever it is wherever you live. They have these policies and procedures that they put into place. And when they hire somebody new, they train them according to their policies and procedures, not according to the Constitution, not according to what powers and duties were ascribed to them by we the people. Again, that's my banner. That's why I keep this banner behind my head. We the people gave certain powers to the government to protect our rights. How is that protecting your rights? When you get a statement in the mail that says you owe X amount of dollars, and every state is different. Like here in Utah, it's not terrible, but the fact that you're still getting one is bad. But states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, I mean, you want to talk about taxing people out of their freaking minds, and they just go along with it and think it's okay. And what do we see on the news media? We see.
I'm going to give you a headline right out of one of Steve's lawsuits. Okay, he told me.
All right.
In his lawsuit, you'll like this.
Okay.
It's not the government's job to make you homeless and destitute in order to fund the freedom system.
That is so true.
That's right in the property tax suit. It's not their job to make you destitute and homeless. Okay, to save this wonderful freedom system we have, James, we got to take your house and sell it at a sheriff's sale. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the question is
everybody. You know? Sure.
I have a quick question of how to legally handle a situation. So here, our tax assessor actually does come to every single property, and
Never
when he came,
Never let him in.
Well, I'm tax exempt, so I told him to go F off anyway. But for people that aren't tax exempt, because most people aren't, I get that. Mm-hmm. He straight up says that he is ordered to jump gates and do whatever he has to do to get on people's property with or without consent. Well, how do you legally, without shooting the guy?
No, I would do it. I would shoot his ass.
I would absolutely, yeah. I was
like, that's how you get shot. That was actually my words. I was like, that's how you get shot. Listen, and I have two giant dogs next to me. So
he's full of shit, okay? He's got no authority to walk on anybody's property. No, you tell him, come back when you got a warrant. You got a warrant? Because
Yeah, well,
he has
you have
no
a reason to be
authority
on my property.
Listen, he can go on taxpayers' property, like a business. He can walk in Walmart and go walk through Walmart, okay? They can't stop him from doing that. He does have statutory authority to do that. Why? Because Walmart is an entity created under the state statutes.
Mm-hmm.
He's got those legal authorities. You're not created under the state statutes. The legislature can't grant him authority to be jumping your gate, okay, and to be doing things. So you tell him, like you said, go to FOA, okay, and come back when you have a warrant. And if you do jump my gate, I will shoot your stupid ass. You've been put on notice, okay? That's how that works. Don't let these people on your property. Don't ever let anyone tell you they have a right to come into your property. That's total nonsense.
Yeah, I got a big lock. And I got another dog.
I have a question also. So in the beginning, when we started the conversation, we had talked about why the same as income taxes, property taxes are designed for businesses. So they're implying we're a business so that they can get away with the tax. How do you had mentioned that's your first hurdle. So how do folks get away from the hurdle to separate themselves from the notion that they're a business and allowed to be taxed?
I don't think they're even implying that you're a business, Justice. I think that they're just thinking that they actually think in their head that property taxes are a whole separate animal.
Yeah.
That they're a municipality and a county government and your local government, your town, your borough. They think they just have a right to tax property, any property in their area. They just think they have a right to tax. Now, they can't sit down and tell you where this power came from. Right. They can't show you any status, any connection with the state, how they were granted this power. They just know that that's how they do things and that's how they were told to do things. They're not assuming you're a business. They're just assuming they can tax every square inch of property in their area. And here's the problem for them when you sue them in federal district court, like we were just talking about. They can't come in and explain how they got your property on their tax roll. They don't know, okay? They just know that it was there when they got there, which an assessor said to me. Your property was on the assessment roll when I got here. Oh, okay.
Oh, that makes it okay then.
Just wash your hands, you know.
Yeah.
You got nothing to do with it.
Makes it totally fine.
I'm just my
makes
dog.
it fine, you know. Hey, it was there when I got here, you know. Hey, that little kid chained up in the basement. He was there when I bought the house, you know. Not my problem, you know.
Well, that escalated
We just
quickly.
leave them there and feed them, you know.
Yeah.
That's the stupidity of what their logic is, you know.
Where
He was there when I got here, you know.
Just make sure you change their water once a week.
Yeah, we give him water and food, you know, once a day. We give him some bread and some water, you know. But he was there when we got here, so we're not responsible for him. We just leave him there, you know. This is the mentality of these people. So it's not that they're saying you're a corporate entity or you're a business. These people are just so ignorant and stupid that they actually believe they could tax every square inch of property in their area. Because when you read the statute, it says for borough purposes or for county purposes. But the part you're missing that they're overlooking is all legally assessed property, okay? All legally property subject to taxes, okay? Well, how could you become subject to a tax? Not because you exist as a person or your property exists. You didn't become subject to a tax because you exist or your property exists. The only way you can become subject to that would be if you had a registered legal entity under the state. And you chose your home address as a domicile for your business or whatever you registered. So they just sort of conveniently leave that part out.
Right.
You just assume that every assessment is legal and everyone's subject to the tax. Has nothing to do with a business entity. But it all comes back to, like Steve says, all taxes are corporate. It's all taxes have to do with corporations. And so that's the only way that the state legislature can touch the property is through a registration of the property. You having a license from the state in some way, and you designating your home as a domicile, because they're going to say, well, Justice, you are whatever. You go around and detail cars, okay? And you designated your home as your domicile, your base of operations. That's where you're storing your polishes and your rags and your equipment. So now we're going to charge you an excise tax. Remember, they can only use 3 taxes: duties, imposts, and excises. You're not an importer or exporter,
right?
So duties and imposts are off the shelf. So now they can charge you an excise tax, which is a privilege tax. That's what an excise tax is. It's a privilege tax. So now they're going to charge you a privilege tax on being a car detailer. the money you make from that, and they're going to now charge your property a property tax because you're using that property to conduct that business privilege. That's exactly what a property tax is. It's no different. It has to be that way.
What if you?
Yeah.
I mean, people work and they're stay-at-home parents, and there's not everybody has a side business. So
if you don't register anything, they got no business talking to you. If you're a car detailer and you're running around detailing cars, they got no business even talking to you. Okay,
right.
Got no business sending you anything or even talking to you. But when you step out and you register it, now you've identified yourself as a legal entity. What's the first thing you do when you set up a business? You get a name, right? Doing business as, DBA.
Yep.
Doing business as, and what do they give you? A tax identification number, right? TIN they give you.
Which is actually taking away a right as well, because you have a right to make money as well without having to do all that nonsense. But my question is,
and don't go register your business. But the problem is, some people have professions where other people that they need to deal with in their profession are only going to deal with them if they're licensed.
I agree.
Yeah.
So it's a fine line, you got to sort of pick and choose how you want to do this,
Right. But
even that, if you have a license and I work for somebody, that still doesn't have a right to tax my business. That doesn't give them a right to tax my business. If this job I have, I'm using my home in some business function related to that, that's different. If I'm a tax accountant, I got a tax office in my house. Well, then I can get, here's the other one, a homestead exemption.
Right.
That's what that is. Okay. That's another thing that they have literally bastardized. What a homestead exemption was years back when they first started this, a lot of people were farmers. So a guy might have a farm and 75% of his farm might be crops. The other 25% is his home where his family lived. So they knew they couldn't tax his home where his family lived. So what did they give him? They gave him a homestead exemption. Oh, they only tax 75% of the business of the property instead of 100. But today, the counties use this to say, hey, Justice, we got this great little program for you. Homestead exemption. Go fill some papers out here and we'll take some money off your taxes. Oh, sign me up. Yeah. Your neighbors sign me up. Yeah. I want to pay less. So that's what they've done with the homestead exemption. They've totally bastardized it. And you think about really what taxes are. When you read the federal tax laws, taxes must be apportioned equally.
Yes.
So how can your home property taxes be apportioned equally when you don't have a homestead exemption, but your neighbor's got one? Okay, right. So he's not paying a different tax rate than you are. Okay, so now we're not equal apportionment anymore, are we? So there's a lot of things they're doing that they're not following the actual tax codes.
Something that's interesting, Alphonse, is when you get these statements in the mail from your county. Like I know in my case, they usually send out the statement sometime right around in September. And it talks about your current year taxes, and it shows all the breakdown of what those alleged taxes are going towards. And you see things like schools, police, things of that nature. You want to talk about a big lie?
Yeah.
That is a big lie. Because I'm here to tell you right now, if every single tax that we are taxed went away, with the exception of a sales tax. I'm going to ask this question, Crash. I want to see what you think, Crash and Justice. If there was no more taxes, no income taxes, no property taxes that are being charged this way, if no other taxes existed besides sales tax, would our society still function as it functions today?
Yes,
yeah,
better.
Of course.
Because right now, all of those taxes just go to corruption or to the
Pockets.
UN.
So you guys hit the nail on the head. You're absolutely right. There is more than enough money that is generated from sales tax to fund every single aspect of the state government, the county governments, and municipalities. More than enough.
And our economy would be so much better because people wouldn't be paying all that money to taxes. That
Exactly.
Our sales taxes would actually increase in amount, even if we actually
more sales
tax itself.
More tax, exactly. So if people are spending more money, then there's more sales tax revenue coming in. Exactly. This is. You've sometimes have heard this whole trickle-down economics thing. This is essentially what it is. If you remove these burdens from the people,
Mhm.
They'll have more money in their pockets. They'll go out and buy more things. There will be more revenue coming in. Now, that's why I'm saying this is the biggest scam, and why I'm on a mission here. That this year is my year that I'm doing the same thing. So I just about 2 weeks ago, I sent off a letter to my county assessor, and let's see if I have it here. I'll pull it up and read it to you, because I want you guys to see what we do here. Is
This is one of my questions, is that I wanted for the folks out there that have no clue about this. You're like step number 1 and 2 as far as action items. Now we're saying for people that don't have a business, or just the normal homeowner that goes to work and is getting taxed. Step 1.
Yeah. So what you do is you need to, again, you need to be able to articulate your arguments, right? And so read the Steve Emerson files. We have them. They're saved in the files of our group. They're saved within Alphonse's group on Telegram. It's all there.
See Steve's record request? It's like 2 sentences.
It's
2 sentences.
That's essentially, and I don't know what I did. I mailed it off.
The first thing is to do a record request, state record request, formal record request.
That's exactly what I did. So I sent a letter to my county assessor, and in that letter, I can't find it right off the top of my head, but I can paraphrase. I said 3 things. I said, number 1, please provide the assessment of my property that is notarized, that is signed as is required by the clearly established laws of the state of Utah. And then number 2, I said, please explain how my property, and I'm paraphrasing here because I can't remember off the top of my head. I said, please explain how my property has a situs with the county. And then the last thing is I said, please provide your authority to tax me and my property simply because I exist. Those are the 3 things that I asked for. Now, every public official has a duty and a requirement to respond to your requests. So we're laying the groundwork here, right? This is why Steve says this. You know, your exhibits to lawsuits, that's the evidence that they can't overcome. You want to get a settlement right out of the gate. You want to file a lawsuit and have them come to the table, go, we can't defend against this. Here, we're gonna settle this. That's how you do it, is by doing the groundwork beforehand, by sending out qualified written requests, as they're called, when you're dealing with mortgage companies and other companies, or records requests. Every state has a law. Here in Utah, it's the Government Records Accountability and Management Act, otherwise known as GRAMA. The federal level, it's FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. So you send out these requests to the county assessor and say, dude, where did you get the authority to tax me? And I'm going to need evidence. I'm going to need strict admissible evidence. That's what I love about Steve's documents, is when you read them, it says, you need to send to me that acts as admissible evidence, if this were a court of law, to show that you have an authority and a duty to tax my property. So what's going to happen? Well, you're going to do one of 2 things going to happen. They're going to reply back with whatever they have, which is going to be nothing, or they're going to reply back and say, I'm sorry, we have nothing according to your request. Isn't that what they did in your case, Alphonse?
Yeah, there's only 3 records you're going to ask for, and really you only need 2, but it's 3. You want them to give you a guide, a path to what they're doing. So you want to ask for number 1, provide me the signed assessment. It's got to be no longer than that. Please provide me the signed assessment for so-and-so address.
Yep.
Request number 2, provide the return that was filed to create the assessment. Number 2, you're going to ask, okay? Number 3, provide me the statutory procedure that you're following to create an assessment of my property. They're the only 3 things you want, okay? Now, number 1, they're not going to send you any signed assessment. They're going to send you something that looks like a Zillow printout, 2-page printout with some crap on there, how many bedrooms you got and all that. That's fine. Listen, we never expect to get real records from them. We don't expect to get this back. We're just laying the groundwork, okay? Then they're going to say, like number 2, they're going to say, well, we don't need returns for property tax assessments. They're going to tell you that, okay? Great, no problem. Thank you very much, okay? Now you're telling me you're just coming up with numbers without a return. Great. Number 3, they probably will answer. They'll give you some statutes, which is good because they'll point to exactly what they're using. And then you start to go dig in and read that and read what that is, okay? Now, the only reason we use that, we know we're not getting any documents back that are of any relevance. But when you see my lawsuit and you see how that's put there, you're going to see the record requests that I've done. You're going to see some of the responses I got back. And you're going to see the paragraph that says, when they were unable to provide an assessment pursuant to law, a return pursuant to law, it led me to believe that the tax assessor was falsifying the tax roll, okay? Because he don't have the actual documents that he's supposed to have. Where did he get this assessment from? Pulled it out his rear end? He hired some company that pulled it out of their rear end? Because they don't have no assessment based on the three elements. The market value of the property, the depreciation and replacement costs of what's in the property, and the income of the property. They don't have any assessment that addresses those three elements, because that's what a real assessment would look like.
Yes.
If a business is going to sell their business and they brought an assessor in, there are the three elements. He would look at what that business is selling for, what the properties are selling for in the area. He'd have number one done. Then he'd look at the guy's equipment and go, okay, yeah, you got this equipment, but this is 10 years old. It's probably worth this, and this equipment's worth this. So then he'd have a value of the depreciation of the equipment, and he would know, hey, listen, if there was a fire here, you're going to need X amount of dollars to replace the equipment. So then he would have element two. He would have depreciation costs and replacement costs. And then he would talk to the guy and say, well, let me see your income tax from last year. How much money did the business make? Then he'd have element three. So then from those three elements, he could create an assessment of what that business is worth, of what the person wanting to buy the business should be paying for it. He can only do that with those elements. He just can't look at it and go, yeah, I think it's worth about $500,000. Yeah, that's $500,000. I'm an assessor. I said $500,000. That's not how the laws work. You got to have a factual basis for this. And so even though you don't see returns a lot of times in states attached to property, remember we talked about it. You have to clear that first hurdle, being a taxpayer, which is somebody that's organized, incorporated under the statutes and doing business in the state, and then owning property. Because remember we said that property that the business is using, they can then charge the business an excise tax when the privilege of doing the business, and they can now charge the property a property tax because they're using the property to conduct the business privilege. So
here's what I would say to those of you who are watching and those of you who are going, wow, okay, this is eye-opening, which it is, right? Anytime Alphonse gets on any type of platform, it's eye-opening. So if you're wondering, well, okay, what can I do? I can't tell you this enough. Go to the file section in our group in Affidavits 101. Go to the file section in Alphonse's group. It's just his name, Alphonse Faggiolo. Search for the Steve Emerson files. The very first document is the record request. And it says the same thing. It says, please send me the signed assessment. Signed under the penalty of perjury, as the law clearly states. Okay? Start doing this. Send in a records request to your county assessor. Start building that foundation. You're going to get, just like what Alphonse says, you might get something back said, well, this is what we use to assess your property. We don't have any records pursuant to this request, or whatever the case may be. And when you follow this process, there's two different ways you can go about this. You can go about this administratively, which is what the Administrative Procedures Act was put into place for, because they realized our courts are getting overwhelmed with suits. We need to find a way for people to figure out their problems without involving the courts. So there's the Administrative Procedures Act. Every state has one. And when you follow the Administrative Procedures Act, you find that's quite powerful when you follow it according to these provisions. So when you send in these records requests and you don't get back what you're looking for, you can actually file, or you could send a claim. Now here in Utah, there is a law, a statutory law that governs, again, remember, statutes and codes. Whose actions do they govern, you guys? Justice, Crash? Statutes and codes?
Whose acts do they govern?
Whose actions do they govern? Yes.
Oh, theirs.
Theirs
Ours.
as in the public servants, correct?
Right,
Yes.
the people that
And anything that's anything that's organized under the statutes and codes. They're corporate bylaws.
I have a question that I know a lot of people that are just touching their toe into this.
Okay.
have.
Hold that thought. I'll come right back to you. Okay.
All right.
So here in Utah, I can file a notice of claim with whatever entity has violated clearly established law and or violated my constitutional rights. And you can, if your evidence is strong enough, you can actually do this outside of court. The problem is you're going to find that it's just like Alphonse is finding here. That's the reality of that happening. It's going to be slim to none. But you still, in some cases, you still need to go through that process. But I'm just letting you know there is an administrative process for it.
It's just, okay, so it's just a direct communication to them prior to the court
Correct.
to set a record. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So, Crash, what was your question?
How is it that, well, first of all, we know that the systems are in place and that they're corrupt and all that other stuff, but I know of at least one person that has gone to prison for tax evasion. I don't know the context behind it, but I know that that is a fear that everybody has when they start approaching this. What is it that this process does that helps stand up for your rights as a actual citizen and not an entity while not being accused of tax evasion?
So again, have you ever heard of a thing called a taxpayer bill of rights? You ever hear that?
No.
Crash?
No.
Justice, have you ever heard of a taxpayer bill of rights?
No.
So every state has one. The IRS has one. And it says, this is, if you're a taxpayer, these are the rights you have. Whoa, wait a second here. Hold on a second. What did we learn in this conversation is the definition of a natural person?
Well,
Somebody who has,
with a title.
yeah, somebody who
has rights ascribed to them, all right?
Ascribed.
Okay.
And we're supposedly not taxpayers.
Exactly. Tax evasion, people who are convicted of tax evasion went into these arguments arguing the wrong things. They never have the argument that they should have had. Is like, hold on a second here. What evidence does this court have, or does the prosecution have, or whoever it is, that unequivocally, without a doubt, proves I am a taxpayer?
Now, if you go in as a taxpayer, they're going to treat you under statute as a taxpayer.
Exactly.
And whatever remedies that's in that statute, that's what you're limited to, okay?
So if you know someone who has gone to jail for tax evasion,
They probably went in as a taxpayer.
they went in as a taxpayer.
Like I said, I was a
Guarantee
kid when
it.
that happened, so I don't have the context, but I do know my friend's dad went to jail for that.
Listen,
so I don't.
Here's another argument false arguments people make is like, don't go in and argue that property taxes are unconstitutional. No, they're not.
No, they're not.
Property taxes are perfectly constitutional. The misapplication of property taxes upon subjects they're not, or people they're not written for, that's unconstitutional. Okay.
Yeah.
But people will go in and argue that property taxes are unconstitutional. That's a losing argument. You're going to lose it all day long. Now, the advantage.
Look who's watching.
Who's that? Oh, no, the big Civ. He's a pro.
Yeah.
He's a troublemaker, that guy.
Yeah,
That guy's
he
a
is.
troublemaker, man. So, but
Hey, Brandon.
the advantage you guys are going to have is, I learned, most everything from Steve about this stuff. He's probably the foremost property tax expert in the country. Okay. Mm-hmm. For the first time ever, you're going to actually see a property tax suit, something that Steve would write. It's going to look just like something Steve wrote. Okay. Now you're going to have an outline on how to do this. And if you're in Pennsylvania, it's almost like erase your name, put my county tax collector, put new names in and go file. But if you're in Utah, you could take my suit and go, I see what Alphonse is hitting here. I got to go find Utah's equivalent. Oh, yeah, here it is. Because you're going to search the same terms I have in mine. You're going to search your Utah code, and there are statutes going to pop. You go, oh, there it is.
You're going to find them.
There's what he's talking about here. I'm going to put this in here, and you're going to see the pieces all start to flow together. But you're actually going to see a real property tax suit, what it looks like. And it's going to be a real successful property tax suit. And it's a suit that's something you've never seen before, because in that suit, it asks for the impoundment of a grand jury, a federal grand jury, because, listen, it's just not me they're doing this to in this county. They're doing this to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in Pennsylvania. That's called federal racketeering, okay? Mm-hmm. They're collecting money they have no entitlement to collect. Yes. And they're doing this as an organized group. This is federal racketeering. Hey, listen, I think we need to arrest these people and hold them for bail or prison until trial. You'll see that in the suit too. Not that they'll do that, but guess what that's going to do when the county gets that? Now they have to worry about, number one, we can't answer this lawsuit. How the hell do we answer this lawsuit and explain how this guy's property is on our ad valorem tax roll? How did that happen? So we can't answer that. We're going to have, listen, when I put this suit out, and once you people start doing the same, you go on what Steve calls the public relations campaign. I'm going to send copies out to all the local media. I got 320 people in Pennsylvania, got their email addresses, head of TV stations, head of radio stations, newspapers, and I'm going to send it out to the national media. And I'm going to put a cover sheet on there with my 150-page suit. 92 is actually the suit, and the other is just exhibits. And it's going to say, if you're paying property taxes, you're probably being ripped off. How many people you think are going to read that suit?
Oh, yeah.
How about just not everybody, okay?
You're going to get...
think anybody likes paying property taxes. They're going to read it and go, oh, my God, this guy's right. Oh, he's right. Look at this. So now anybody can start taking what's out here, what's given to them, and adopting it to their state. And start, if you had 2 or 3 Steve Emersons in each county, or 2 or 3 me in each county doing this stuff, the walls would start to rattle a little bit.
Yeah.
Because now word's getting out. Now 4 or 5 people are going to start doing it. Now maybe 100 people in my county start doing this. Yep. How many people in Pennsylvania now? I got a lot of people in Pennsylvania in my group. How many people are going to take that? It's like me giving them a lobster dinner. Here's a lobster dinner for you. It's already made for you. Okay. You just got
ready to go
on it that you want. Okay. You just got to touch it up a hair. And now you could go sue your county. Yeah. Now you have a roadmap to do this. How many suits you think are going to fly around in Pennsylvania now after I file that first suit?
Oh, geez.
How about a shitload, maybe? A ton are going to file because people are going to go, oh, I'm going to do this. Yeah. But what I want people to do is don't just go put your name on the suit. You got to understand what's in the suit.
Yes.
You got to understand conceptually what's in the suit. That's why
you got to be able to.
Today's important. Yeah.
You got to be able to articulate it. You got to be able to speak to it. You can't just slap your name on it and go file it, and then maybe there's something in there that doesn't belong because it doesn't apply to you in your situation or in your state. You just can't do that.
Here's how this works. When you file a suit, and it's a good suit that they don't want to answer, you're going to get a phone call from them, and they're going to have a little meeting with you. Mm-hmm. They want to find out, sit down and talk to you. They want to find out, hey, did you write this? Or did somebody else write it? Seriously. Is this something you copied off the internet and just put your name on?
Yeah.
Okay? Because they're going to start asking you questions about it. And if you're going, and you're hemming and hawing because you put your name on it, they're going to go, we're going to court with this guy. We're going to wipe him up.
Yeah.
We're going to knock him out just in paperwork.
Would a good answer to that be, well, I did the paperwork, but had a consultant, because that's really true.
Listen, it's a game of chicken, okay? They want to get a read on you. So if they're sitting down with you and you don't sound real confident and they don't really think you wrote that, they're going to go to trial with you, okay? Yeah. They figure they're going to knock you out. They'll knock you on some procedural thing. They'll knock you out, or they'll just knock your paperwork out because you don't really understand what's in the paperwork. Mm-hmm. But when you sit down with them and you say, hey, wait a minute, taxpayers clearly defined as Title 61, subjectability to tax reporting, Title 61, Section 160, 161.3, 151.3, 151.5, an entity organized, incorporated under the statute of the Commonwealth. You start rattling this stuff off to them, and you start telling them, hey, listen, assessment must have 3 things. Must be market value, must have depreciation, replacement costs, and must have an income approach. You don't have any assessment like that. And that's under so-and-so statute, Title 72, blah, blah, blah. Assessment law under 5020. And you start rattling codes off at them, they're going to say, he wrote this. He knows what's in the paperwork.
Yeah.
We can't go to court with him. We will lose in court. If they go to court, and they will lose against me, now they got a major problem. Because
now it's public.
They go to court and kick their ass in court, which I will do. Now it's public. Now everybody in the county is going to hear about this lawsuit where the county just got their ass kicked by this guy in Delaware County. Just beat their ass all over the place and ripped them. He got his house off the tax roll, and he got millions of dollars in a settlement. Everybody in the county is going to come at them now. Everybody in Pennsylvania is going to come at them. They can't have that. So it's a sit-down feeling process. They want to find out, if we go to court with this person, Can we beat them? Because if you know what's in that paperwork and you could just shut them down and rattle it off, they're going to know we cannot go to court with this person. We can't win. And God forbid we give an answer, because that's that public relations thing you do when you send a suit out and you ask people to call into the county and you ask them to ask the county when they're going to provide an answer to your suit. Because the county's going to say, we can't comment on this. This is ongoing litigation. But all they know is they're getting calls coming in from people waiting for an answer. Because James knows when my federal suit gets filed, that goes up on the Pacer site. Anybody with a Pacer account can go up there and look at my number and go look at that suit and see what's going on. So now they can just sit back, wait for the county to submit an answer. And if they read my suit with that cover page, it said, if you're paying property taxes, you're probably being ripped off. They're dying to get that answer from the county because they want to hear what the county's saying. They want to get a response to what the county has to say about this. And when they start to not see a response after 4 weeks, they're going to think, boy, this is odd. Wouldn't the county be able to respond right away?
They should, right?
That was just wrong. They would just respond right away. Why haven't they filed an answer yet?
Well, if what they're doing is above board and well within their constitutionally prescribed duties and well within the statutes and provisions of the law, it should be, oh, geez, here's another frivolous lawsuit. But they know it's not, and they can't. They can't let it get to that point because they know, just like Alphonse said, if they go to court with him, this is going to be a massive public spectacle, and it's not going to make just local news. It'll be national news all over the place because when they get to that verdict, let's say, for example, they do go all the way through a jury trial. And let's just say that the jury comes back and says, yeah, clearly you had no duty or no authorization to tax this guy. You not only are you liable for actual damages, you're liable for punitive damages of X amount of dollars. I mean, it's you're going to be talking upwards in the millions, and that's going to make these people think twice. So they will do everything they can. This is why, Steve has done this before. Steve Emerson has, but this is why his suits are not available because he took it down the road. They filed a settlement. They filed a non-disclosure of some kind where they seal that record. We do not want the public seeing this because, hey, we're gonna treat this guy as an isolated event. Maybe it's just this one guy. Maybe it's just this one area. Now Steve has that reputation. You go down within 3 blocks of his home down in Florida, you're not going to see anybody that has anything to do with the city or the county there. They don't want to go anywhere near him because they get sued every time they do.
Yeah, so, and listen, Steve's helped a lot of people, but Steve just don't do paperwork for people and throw it. He'll do it to try and put a halt to something until he's got to get the person he's helping learn the paperwork. Even the suit he got $38.2 million for his buddy, that took Steve like 6-8 months to teach that guy the suit, okay? Yeah. And that guy knew the suit as good as Steve knew it. Yeah. So that when they sat down for that agreement I was telling you about, Justice, they had a little meeting about that. Steve was there. But Steve knew he couldn't answer for John because Steve can't litigate the suit for John.
Right.
Steve was there to help. He could contribute, but John had to know the material. Right. And when they realized that either one of them knew the suit, they knew they couldn't go to court. And there was a lot of bad stuff in that suit. They euthanized all his animals. They destroyed $1 million of his. He had about $1 million in goods in his house that they. Collections, baseball card collections, everything gone. Lost everything, okay? They sold the house. They arrested him as a vagrant in his own house. Put him in jail as a vagrant in his own house. So there were some really bad things in there, okay? And you got idiot judges signing writs of execution to take the property when they have no rights to the property. So there was a lot of bad things going on. But in that case, when they were sitting down, they were trying to lowball to start out. I think they started at $800,000, and they were lowballing. And they had the guy from risk management in there from the county, the insurance guy from the county in there. And Steve said, listen, I think we're just going to go to trial. I think we can get more than $400 million because that's what the amount was that he filed. Wow. And he said, when he said that, I think we can get more than $400 million. He said, given all the shit you people did, all the corrupt, he started naming it. And he goes, I think we get more than $400 million. He said that the risk management guy literally winced, like, ooh, ooh, because he knew, guess what? He probably might get more than $400 million. When you tell him you killed all his animals, in a week all his animals were dead, you ruined $1 million of his property and his house, you sold it, you arrested him as a vagrant, put him in jail, the homeowner, you put him as a vagrant in jail, he's in his own property. You gave his house money else. Now, here's the funny part. James. When they're in the negotiations, right from the start, guess what the county wanted Steve's friend, guess what the county wanted Steve's friend to do with the house? The house that they already sold. They already sold the house and had a family in there for a couple years. They wanted Steve's friend, get this now, to sign the house over to them. Wait a minute. You people sold the house already. You sold it to these people over there. They've been in there for 2 years. I thought it was your house. They wanted Steve's friend to sign the house over. And Steve's buddy let it be known from the start. And Steve told him, you are not getting that house. He's getting the house back. You are not getting that house. Because his buddy, his neighbors seen what went on. Dude, he was embarrassed. You know, his neighbors seen what was going on. They sent like a SWAT team to his house to get him out of the house. They used the neighbor to trick him to get out of the house. One of his neighbors contacted him because they told the neighbor, he's going to get really hurt. If you don't help us out, he's going to get really hurt. We're going to have to go get him. So the neighbor coaxed him out, lied to get him outside. And they freaking threw him on the ground, arrested him.
Oh.
So his neighbors seen all this stuff. So he was getting back in that house come hell or high water. He wanted to go back to show, I beat them. I beat them, you know. So he was getting the house back. But I just thought that was hilarious that they already sold the house. Then they wanted him to sign the house over that they already sold. Oh, okay.
Where does it stand now? What's the outcome of that? Is it still in process?
No.
He got the house off the tax roll. He took all the utility meters off the house. Steve told him, get all the utility meters off the house. Nobody ever steps foot on this property again. And that settled for $38.2 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Actual $38.2 million.
So the family had to leave.
Yeah, so this is
family about $500,000 to leave.
I was going to say, this is the other problem the county just created for themselves. Yeah. They have that family in there that they had no lawful authority to sell that property to them to begin with, and now they have to go and get restitution to that family. So that family.
And Steve could have sued them too. Guess what? Steve could have sued the family that bought the house.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you don't buy property that way. Where do you know you go to buy property and they say, hey, listen, we sold it to you. We don't have a key or anything to give you. And listen, you're going to have to go get the sheriff guy to pull the people out of the house. But you own it. Here, James, it's yours.
Hey,
it's from us.
What wasn't that? Were you talking with somebody at your local municipality there where they said buyer beware?
Yeah, I said, let me get this straight. I said, so you're going to give people the title right after they buy the property? And she said, oh no, I can't give titles out. I can't create titles. So I said, wait, you're selling property without titles? And she said, buyer beware. So, buyer gosh. Now, what I didn't say to her, hey, seller beware, because guess what? Your boss, that tax bureau boss, guess who's in my lawsuit?
Yeah.
Yep.
The boss is in my lawsuit.
Oh gosh. Hey, this has been.
And that was a property tax issue, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, like I knew, guys, this was going to be a great conversation. I'm just going to wrap things up here. We're running up on an hour and a half. I hope you guys, those of you who are listening, those of you who are watching, whether it be live with us or down the road on one of our platforms we're on, I hope this information was useful. We hope that a little bit sinks in where you're like, wait a second, something doesn't make sense here. What have I always said? If it doesn't make sense, it violates what, you guys? If it doesn't make sense, it violates crash justice. I'm talking to you guys.
Everything always a pop quiz.
Your instinct.
If it doesn't make sense, it violates common law. Okay?
Which is your instinct.
Exactly.
God-given
if it just doesn't sit right, it violates the common law. And our entire republic is built on the foundation of common law. So,
and right now, nothing makes sense.
Nothing makes sense, which is why it's crazy.
How off the grid these people are. How these are the attorneys. When I did a recent motion, I'm citing Pennsylvania case law. My one paragraph, I said nothing in the paragraph, okay? the entire paragraph was about the legislature doesn't use a surplusage of language. In other words, if they put something in a statute, they want it used. You don't get to pick and choose like, hey, listen, I'm going to follow that part of it, but I'm not going to follow that part. So the entire paragraph I had was court sightings from Pennsylvania, most from the Supreme Court. I had a bunch of paragraphs like that. I'm not saying this stuff. I'm giving them actual court sightings from Pennsylvania. On every answer, the attorney pretty much answered, Mr. Faggiolo is making legal conclusions. Does not require a response.
It does not require response.
Legal conclusions, no, that the courts have made these legal conclusions, not me. But what that showed me, when I get him in federal district court, he's done. When he gets sued, because that'll fly with the local municipal judge who's going to carry his water for him and going to cover for him. Okay, that ain't going to fly in a real lawsuit. You ain't going to give me an answer that I'm making legal conclusions. You got to give me a friggin' answer. And I get you in trial or deposition, I'm going to tear you apart because you can't support anything you're doing. So that's the level of corruption you're dealing with.
It doesn't require an answer.
Level.
Yeah, that's a legal conclusion. It doesn't require an answer. Yeah, we Justice and I know we saw that recently too with the case that she's involved with. This again, we could spend another hour and a half talking about these crooked liars and the crap they pull and this and that. But really, what I wanted to accomplish with today was to plant the seed. You guys, you just need to know and understand: property taxes, as they're being applied to your property, are not constitutional. Property taxes are constitutional within the frame of the commerce that Congress has the authority to regulate. So as long as you were not created under the statutes of your state, which none of us are or were, then you have the county assessor has no right to tax you directly. So you need to learn how to fight it. You need to learn how to submit record requests. You need to learn how to follow that process. Read the Steve Emerson files. He's got a great, I don't know how long that document is. He's got a couple of sample suits there. He breaks it out all the way down. So, Alphonse, hey, thank you again for joining us. I really appreciate you being here. As always, good information. So it's never a dull moment whenever we have you on. So I really appreciate you joining.
I have a quick plug.
So I was just going to say, Crash, Justice, anything you guys want to add before we close it out?
Look, when we bought our property in Mississippi, nobody told us. We had to go dig and just kind of see if we could find any information. Nobody's going to tell you if you are tax exempt to where you don't have to do this in the first place. 100% VA disabled. A lot of states, you don't have to pay property taxes or even go down this road. So look into your state and go through the VA, call them and see if your state's exempt, and then you could just file for that, and then you don't have to deal with any of the court.
Yeah. But I mean, that's for all of you veterans out there, which again, God bless you for doing what you've done. We love and appreciate you. And Crash is right. I would dare say almost all of the states have some type of a provision like that. If you're a disabled veteran, you're property tax exempt. Now, again, they're misapplying the statute, right? They're misapplying the code. So even if you're not a veteran, as they're applying the code to you, it doesn't pass the smell test.
Right. I'm just saying it could be an easier process to just get out of it if you are in my situation, because nobody told us. We had to figure it out. Yeah.
So I'm glad you guys figured that out. Justice, anything you want to close us out with?
I just have a quick question for Alphonse had said the very first hurdle is to become non-taxpayer. How do you do that? How do the people out there, when they're listening to this, go, how do I get step one accomplished? Is it an administrative thing? What exactly is it?
No. What I was referring to is when you read the actual, like I said, the legislature has to have some way to touch the property. And that only comes through the income tax process of your state. And that's when you organize. First, you got to organize and incorporate under the statute, under the statutes of the state. That's the first hurdle, okay? In other words, before we can talk about property or anything else after that, you've got to first do that. Once you do that, then they can talk about your property. Because after you do the organization and incorporation, then it says, and either doing business and owning property and conducting business activities.
Right.
You first got to clear that first hurdle of being an organized and incorporated entity to even get into the tax code where they can touch your property.
Right.
So if you don't clear that first hurdle, you just can't be a taxpayer because you own property.
I understand.
That'd be literally taxing you right there on the property.
Okay, so it's primarily null and void then for most people. I thought because, you know, a lot of us, when you fill stuff out, it asks you if you're either a citizen, a taxpayer, or whatever. So I thought you were talking about an administrative process. Okay, got it.
No, listen, they're gonna call you a taxpayer come hell or high water. It doesn't matter what you give them, what you showed them. If you're Steve Emerson, they're gonna pull you off the tax rolls. They're gonna know better. But if you're just Justice Smith, whatever, they don't care what you say. Okay, they're only going to care about what you say when you have them serve the lawsuit, when they knock on the tax manager's door and say, Miss Duffy, you're being served. You're being sued.
You've been served. Yeah.
And she looks at it and goes, oh, my God, $4 million. Wait a minute. Because she don't know what's, listen, that tax assessor, the tax assessor that gets sued, here's how you sue real quick before we end. Here's the 5 entities you sue in a tax suit. You're going to sue your local tax collector, your town. Mm-hmm. You're going to sue the tax manager of the county's tax office. Most counties have a tax office, okay? And you're going to sue the head assessor. They're the 3 people you sue. Then you're going to sue the tax office, and you're going to sue the county. That's the 5 entities you're suing.
Yeah.
Okay? The 3 real people you sue in their individual and official capacity. That means they could lose their home, their bank account, and their business. So you sue them in both capacities. They're the 5 entities you sue. You don't want to sue everybody under the sun because you could get a suit with 20 friggin' defendants. Will cost you a mint to serve it, and it'll be a mess to litigate it. So always keep suits simple. Even though you could sue A, B, and C, just sue A. If A's the reason for what happened, sue A, leave B and C alone. Keep it simple.
Yep. Awesome. Well, hey, again, Alphonse, thank you for being here. Great information, you guys. Again, we ask this every time. Please, please, please like and subscribe our videos. Give us a good thumbs up on whatever channel you're on. It helps us to get this information out to as many other like-minded patriots such as us and those of you that are listening. So with that, you guys, thank you again. We're gonna call it a day, and we will see you guys all hopefully next Friday.
Bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Thanks everyone.
Alphonse. Bye.